What's up, RotoBallers? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jorden Hill, and it's time to take a look at some warning signals. I'm talking about some players that have been a disappointment for fantasy managers as of late, and whether or not we have legitimate reasons to be worried. We'll talk about what to do with these guys as we get deeper into the fantasy playoffs, but first, as always, make sure you subscribe to RotoBaller so that you don't miss out on any of our upcoming content for the rest of the season and beyond. Let's get it started with one of the most talented running backs in the league, Nick Chubb of the Cleveland Browns. Now, Chubb was a fantasy rock star for the first 12 weeks of the season, but he's failed to eclipse double-digit half PPR fantasy points in any of his 3 contests with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Chubb managed 99 rushing yards in Week 15, but he finished with 0 receptions and failed to find the end zone, which probably left you wanting a bit more in the first round of the fantasy playoffs. The Browns have seemingly taken a step back offensively with Watson, as they've scored just 2 offensive touchdowns over the past 3 weeks. Again, Chubb was sensational earlier in the season, but his fantasy output has always been a bit touchdown dependent since he's not a huge threat as a pass catcher. I wish I could say that Chubb had a cakewalk of a schedule to close the season, but the Saints and the Commanders both rank as top 12 most difficult matchups for fantasy running backs in 2022. All of that said, I can't imagine how stacked your team would have to be to consider benching Nick Chubb. He'll remain a talent and volume-based low-end RB1 the rest of the way. Moving over to a running back I'm a little bit more concerned about, let's discuss Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals. Mixon had a difficult test against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, but his utilization was arguably more worrisome than his results. Mixon did earn 6 targets, which we obviously love to see, but he handled only 11 carries and ceded 40% of the snaps and 7 carries to Samaje Perine, who thrived in Mixon's absence in weeks 12 and 13. Mixon's usage as a receiver this year has been great, and it gives him a relatively safe floor in PPR formats, but I'm just a little bit scared that we won't see another true ceiling performance out of him with matchups against the Patriots and Bills on the horizon. Both of these teams have been stout defending the run this season. He's a talented player on one of the top offenses in the NFL, so Mixon is far from somebody that you have to bench, but unlike Chubb, I'd at least be willing to consider it if I had other really good options. One final running back I want to mention is Kenneth Walker, who a lot of fantasy managers were terrified to start this week as he returned from an ankle injury. He didn't deliver a big-time showing, but this was almost to be expected against the league's best defense in the San Francisco 49ers. Walker will take on the Chiefs and the Jets to close out the fantasy playoffs, and I think you should have full confidence deploying him in those matchups. After missing Week 14, he immediately reprised his lead role as he played on 75% of the Seahawks snaps, and he demonstrated his explosiveness with a 33-yard reception late in the game. It's wheels up for Walker from here on out. Over at wide receiver, we have Davante Adams posting 2 consecutive down games. With Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller back on the field, Adams finished with just 4 receptions for 28 yards in Week 15. Adams may no longer rack up double-digit targets every week, but there's absolutely no reason to panic. The Patriots have contained opposing wideouts all season, and it's no secret that Bill Belichick likes to take away his opponent's number 1 option at all costs. Davante will face the Steelers and the 49ers over the next 2 weeks, both of which are much softer matchups for wide receivers. Let's close things out with JAKOBI Meyers of the New England Patriots. Myers was beginning to look like an every-week fantasy option in the middle of the season, but he's been terribly disappointing since Week 9, even in contests that he's remained fully healthy throughout. The Pats clearly have a run-first identity at this point, as Myers led the team with just 47 receiving yards on Sunday. What was just a forgettable performance, though, turned to total disaster when Myers attempted a lateral on the last play of regulation that was intercepted by the Raiders and returned for a touchdown. It was a mind-numbing play, as New England could have just taken its chances in overtime, and it likely cost your fantasy team a few points for the fumble. We can obviously throw this play away, but it's difficult to trust Myers in this offense going forward. Desperate times call for desperate measures in the fantasy playoffs, so if there's a player you need on waivers, I'd have no issues moving on from Myers. That's all I got for this week. Please remember to leave a like if you enjoyed, and comment down below what players let you down in Week 15. Thanks again for tuning in, happy holidays, and best of luck in the fantasy playoffs.